Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without the authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use. It is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
They've been giving her to try to get rid of it, trying to get rid of the baby. He gave that to her, you know what I'm saying, and trying to do whatever he could do. She was feeling sick or whatever. Alright, so he gets her in the car, drops her off to go back home. Alright, when she gets out to go home, she go in the house. Shannon and them get into it with her. They didn't call and see if she was at Jarvis' house because Shannon already knew she was at Jarvis' house because she called to get directions earlier that day while she was at school. So once she get back, they get to fussing at her for going up to Jarvis' shop and calling fast and this and that. Then it all came out, confirming that she was pregnant, was Jarvis' baby, and Shannon lost it. Shannon lost it real bad and jumped on Naziah, beating her, hitting her in the head with some object right there in that house that they overlooking, and killed Naziah because she was already probably having complications. Remember, from whatever they've been giving her to try to get rid of the baby. Remember, she was sick earlier that day and on the floor. Instead of them calling the nurse, they called the counselor. The school failed her. So once Shannon beats on it, she passes out. She dies right there. So they panic. So they get her, the twin sister help Shannon get her into the mama car, and they go and meet Jarvis. Meet Jarvis out there, right where the other girlfriend lives. And Jarvis was going to all these different houses at his different girlfriend house, establishing his alibi, because he knew what had happened between her and Shannon. That he had nothing to do with it, but knew that he was also the last person seen with her and probably would be questioned about her being unalive. So once Shannon and the sister go out there to meet them out there, they get rid of the body, right? So once they get rid of the body, he tells them, bring some extra clothes or whatever. So they get rid of the body and they throw those extra clothes out, which is working. And I don't understand how that's working, because we know what she had on the day of school. We know where she left, got off the bus with the clothes she had on. But they threw out some different clothes with limited amount of blood and stuff on it. Why? Because they only took the jacket off of her, and probably some other shoes and stuff that was already in the house. But she's still buried in what we saw her in, which is that colorful jacket, them jeans, and some other shoes, wherever she is. And I don't think she buried nowhere where she can't be found, because they somewhere else and make people go search in the opposite direction. So she is deceased, but she was killed by Shannon in a rage because of her jealousy or whatever she had going on with Jarvis. And at the end of the day, the mom and the sister knows what Shannon did, and they're not protecting Jarvis, they're protecting Shannon. And Shannon hoping that Jarvis don't snitch on him, but he's not going to tell until after they try and convict him of the murder, and he see the difference between the time. Remember, his lawyer said they're not going to contest and fight the fact that he had inappropriate relations with her. Okay, go ahead and bound it over. But what we are fighting is the murder. Why? Because there's no body. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Now, you do know that Shannon and all of them have already made deals with the DA. Why? Because without Shannon, the mom, King, the fiance, without all those people, they would not have a case for murder against this young lady. So they pieced up parts of their statements and testimonies to present what it was they wanted to present to the court, that he was last seen with it and he's the one that killed him. But believe me, there's other text messages, all kind of messages in their phones that they took. But if they convict them and show that they are also guilty, then who would be on the stand and testify or could testify against Jarvis? Because they all would could get up there and just plead the fifth because they all are being charged. So therefore, they're letting them off and letting them go. They made a deal. They agreed to testify against Jarvis and say what it is that they want them to say, with in turn keeps them from being prosecuted and charged with anything. But trust me, they know exactly what happened. They know exactly what happened to her. But they want to get Jarvis and get Jarvis off the street because they feel like he's the problem. He's the ringleader. But they...
Right now, Jarvis Butts is awaiting trial for the murder and sexual abuse of Neziah Harris.
After listening to days of testimony last month, a judge called Butts a monster and said that opportunities to protect the 13-year-old girl were missed. Tonight, the 7 investigators are revealing years of warnings that preceded Butts' alleged crimes.
Warnings that family members say were made to Children's Protective Services that could have saved Neziah's life. Here's what 7 investigator Ross Jones has uncovered.
You look at that face, and you do not see the horrors that she had gone through in her short life. The exploitation, the molestations, the sexual abuse, and the pregnancy that she was concealing.
Years before Jarvis Butts would be charged by Wayne County's prosecutor, accused of killing and sexually abusing 13-year-old Neziah Harris, Harris's own relatives say they saw the warning signs and told anyone who would listen.
So that at that point, I was like, this is too much. I'm calling CPS.
I tried not just once, but multiple times for them to take me serious in what I was saying.
Kiwana Morton and her cousin Jernell are both relatives of Neziah Harris. In February of 2022, Jernell says she learned of allegations of improper touching involving Butts and other small children. She says she was told about the claims while talking to her niece, Jarvis Butts' girlfriend, and that the alleged victims were Neziah Harris and 2 other children.
I was just like, oh my God, I was not crazy. This needs to be looked into.
She says she took the claim seriously in part because Butts was on the sex offender registry, having spent more than 8 years in prison for third-degree criminal sexual conduct. She didn't alert authorities at first because she believed her niece would notify police. But weeks later, Jernell did notify Child Protective Services. Her complaint came in on April 13, 2022. There was an incident at a birthday party, the complaint reads. One of the children that attended the party accused Jarvis of sexual abuse. Neziah, and name withheld, reported that Jarvis touched both of them inappropriately as well. Jarvis touched, name withheld, in her private area, and it hurt. Jernell made the complaint over the phone.
They basically told me if they needed me for anything else, they would reach out.
The next day, Jernell would receive a text from her niece, Butts' girlfriend, confirming that CPS had contacted her. CPS called me, the text reads. They called about the well-being of my kids. Then they called back to get Jarvis info. A CPS spokeswoman would not tell 7 News Detroit if investigators ever questioned Neziah Harris after receiving the complaint. But we do know it wasn't the only complaint filed with CPS, naming Jarvis Butts.
And it wasn't easy for me to call Protective Services just because of the horror stories that you hear.
Kiwana Morton said she heard about the same allegations against Butts from a conversation with his girlfriend. 2 months after her cousins called to CPS, she would file her own complaint.
I told them that there's a problem and they need to be aware of it. I am 90% sure that there's sexual abuse going on within the home.
Did you specifically mention Jarvis by name?
Yes, absolutely.
Internal CPS records we obtained show that investigators looked into that complaint, conducting a face-to-face interview with Butts, who strongly denied the allegation. A forensic interview was conducted with the alleged victim, and no disclosures were made. CPS said the home was clean and free of observed safety concerns. The allegation was denied, assigned a low risk level. These are 2 complaints of at least 5 filed with CPS since 2015, naming Jarvis Butts. They allege concerns about possible molestation, physical abuse, or living conditions. Some of the complaints are generic, and none would ultimately substantiate that Butts was improperly touching children. Just over a year after the last complaint on record, Butts would be charged with sexually assaulting and murdering Neziah Harris.
I'm brokenhearted because this could have been prevented. All of it could have been prevented.
Attorneys for Jarvis Butts declined comment for this story, citing his pending criminal case. As for CPS, a spokeswoman for the Department of Health and Human Services said that their hearts go out to the family and friends of Neziah Harris. It says that state and federal laws prohibit them from commenting on what we just reported, but that they are committed to ensuring the health and safety of all children. I'm Ross Jones, 7 News, Detroit.